He was someone who had his cake and ate it too. A man beloved, revered, and avoided on the road. As I contemplated how to eulogize the great eulogizer, I was reminded of my dad's belief that every speech is an opportunity for a roast. I'm not sure how many of you knew that Richard was always very conscious of his weight. We never knew whether he stopped eating because of his illness or because he was worried about packing on the pounds as he became more sedentary. So today, let us not just celebrate his life, let us celebrate Richard having achieved his goal weight at his final weigh-in. Richard was often the life of the party, but also the first to leave. He had a presence in every room he entered, and although he did not like to be the center of attention, everyone wanted to hear what he had to say. He was humble, yet confident, never making others feel inferior, but always knowing he was better. His wit and humor were unmatched. There are probably many people here in this room who have been a victim of one of his jokes or roasts, but he had a knack for being offensive without offending. Most of the time, anyway. My dad also left pieces of himself everywhere he went. Seriously, check the planters around restaurant entrances, and there's half-smoked cigars everywhere. There are many legends about Richard, but his driving was certainly top among them. And it was a harrowing experience. His head was on a swivel and his wheel always followed. But somehow, despite numerous accidents and VIP status at the local body shops, he always seemed to escape serious harm. And that was a thread throughout his life. Richard was born prematurely and was not expected to survive. He fell out of his parents' moving car on Route 33, rolling down the street and suffering nothing but road rash.
Oh my God.
To say nothing of his 3 heart attacks. So it was quite apropos that when he was given about a month to live, Richard continued living his best life for another year, never one to care about others' expectations. Now, even if you weren't close to my parents, you've likely heard the lore of their relationship. After 38 years, my dad still cannot wait to come home for every lunch to see my mom. And because of his food consciousness, I can assure you it was to see my mom. My parents met while my mom was a receptionist at the office. And despite popular belief, she was the pursuer. Because of their relationship, my Uncle David had to fire her. And the high school immediately ceased its graduate placement program with the firm. Whenever people heard that they were 20 years apart, and my mom only a few years older than her stepchildren, they marveled at how the family had succeeded in being so close. With Connie even being like a second mother to me. I like to think it was because that their love was so obvious, it just had to be accepted. Now, I was fortunate enough to see him in action, both in his personal life and in work, and what was clear in both was his deep compassion for others. Well, that and his irreverence. True, he rarely expressed it, but his actions always reflected it. And as you can tell from the dry eyes of his children, it was a characteristic he passed on. But to judge him by his words, or lack thereof, would lead one to overlook the character he showed through his deeds. Richard answered many a late-night call from a family member, friend, or client in need. He was the call of last resort for a temple to reach Minion, and he never failed to show, despite not being a religious man. He bought his clients clothes or paid their bills in times of need. He gave to every beggar he passed and donated to every charity, usually anonymously. Margaret recently recalled the time when she was detained at the police station by home overnight, and the officer was reluctant to awaken the Richard Ansell, but had no choice. He arrived shortly thereafter wearing his finest robe and slippers and left with Margaret and her friends in tow. Now, I don't want you to think that Margaret was alone in this. Plenty of people in this room have made a similar call to my dad. Mine was from Croatia. John's were a bit more frequent. He got nothing out of these deeds except knowing that he made someone else's life a little bit better. And that would be a common theme for Richard. His greatest worry was burdening others. If there was a holiday or event that they hosted, he always wanted you to know that you were welcome, but never obligated. He was reluctant to call for fear of disturbing us. Even in death, he made sure not to burden us, choosing a holiday weekend when we would all be around and off from work anyway. A few years ago, my siblings and I were lucky enough to have the chance to spend a long weekend in Florida with him. There, we were able to share memories, reflections on life, and gummies. One of the most poignant moments was when my dad shared his feeling of guilt for not being around enough during Margaret, Caroline, and John's childhood. They, in turn, told him how they always felt his love, even if he couldn't be present all the time. They fondly recalled the trips to Yankee Stadium, decked out in pinstripes and walking blocks through the Bronx because my dad had to park where he could have an easy out. And winter walks on the jetty, except for when John stepped on a rusty nail or when Dad slipped and pulled me down with him, cracking my head on the rocks. Growing up, instead of bedtime stories, my dad used to read to me from a book of Proverbs. For real. His two favorites were, "To err is human, to forgive divine," and "Things done by halves are worthless. It may be the other half that counts." These two proverbs sum up the way Richard lived his life. There's also an old photo of my dad that I think perfectly illustrates who he was, the joy and love that he brought into all of our lives, and the way that he would want to be remembered. Strutting naked up his driveway, all smiles, carrying the morning paper. We almost had it blown up for today, but we didn't want to shame all the men gathered here. In Richard's final moments, my mom felt that his hands and feet were cold, so she put some socks on his feet and held his hands between her legs, right where he wanted to be when he died.
Oh my God. That was incredible. What? I mean,